So let's get the read on this. Does Jeff Bezos have a case? He's putting his own reputation out on the line and personal embarrassment that goes with it when he releases these pictures and texts. Now, keep in mind that the National Enquirer had already committed to doing a story and did release the story 2 days before he formally separated from his wife of 25 years. So they will argue that this was already kind of baked into the cake. Be that as it may, let's get the legal read on it with Emily Campagna. We got trial attorney Brad Micklin, and we've got our own Charlie Gasparino. Deidre is helping us as well. You know, Deidre, to your point, the line that stood out to me is this line quoting the Enquirer editor, and Emily, I'll deal with you on this as a lawyer. This is the Enquirer editor, Dylan Howard, emailing to the Bezos team. It would give us no pleasure to send this email. I hope common sense can prevail, and quickly, about saying that unless you exonerate us and say that this is not, you know, there's nothing untoward going on here with this, with the stories we're doing, more hell will come. That sounds like a threat.
It does sound like a threat, and that's kind of the whole thing when you said common sense. When we distill this down, do we want to have as legal an aggressive boardroom tactic of threatening the publication of stolen nude photographs for someone? Absolutely not. And it's also pretty clear that the thing of value that AMI saw was clearly not only the investigation itself, but what it was uncovering, right? There was potentially large threats to them in that capacity, although now the fact that they are likely engaging in criminal conduct opens the door for a tremendous amount of ramifications for them with the DOJ in the Southern District of New York.
All right, so Brad, at the core here is, did American media through the Enquirer know full well that it was going to release still more threatening material after already having done so, to let Jeff Bezos know that this is serious, and hold over them the possibility we won't release that if you do this? Isn't that a threat?
I don't think so. I think this is just like the Super Bowl of the billionaires. You have AMI versus the Post. You have Trump versus Bezos. But if you look at what was communicated...
The president is involved here then by that?
Well, I mean, there's been comments back and forth between President Trump and the potential divorce of the Bezos.
Well, do you think it leads to any government entity that might have been able to get their hands on these things?
No. Well, that's a different issue.
That would be a whole different...
I think how they intercepted, if they intercepted these messages or these communications, very different. But the letter that was sent, I don't think rises to the level of extortion.
How can it not? I mean, let's look at it this way. A crime was committed, we think, by someone breaking into Bezos or his girlfriend or somebody's phone, right? That's a crime, right?
Well, that's if that's what happened.
If someone breaks in, that's a crime. Bezos hires a private investigator to figure out who committed the crime. Amid investigating that said crime, he gets a letter from AMI saying, if you keep investigating, did I read this right? Mm-hmm. If you keep investigating, we're going to release penis pictures of you.
But they already had. They had already had it.
They had them. They said we're going to release them.
January 9th, Jeff Bezos and his wife Mackenzie revealed that they're going to divorce after 25 years. 2 days after the Enquirer had already informed him that this was coming out with the text, with the questionable pictures, they simply had more. I just wonder if at that stage, Deidre, it said, well, what more?
What I'm wondering, too, is, so the source of the text and the photos from January, what if some people have said, oh, maybe it was like her brother? Now, I mean, can the brother be charged?
That's come up. Michael Sanchez has denied any involvement. He's a California PR type. He's connected to... This gets even more
But you're
weird.
saying there's no damages.
I'm just saying that he is connected to Roger Stone, Carter Page.
Right.
He gets wacky.
But you're saying there's, I think the point you're trying to make is that there's no damages to Bezos on the release of the pictures themselves, which have not been released, by the way. I tell you...
He's already... When I say they already had it, the story's coming out. He knows it's coming out.
No, they never said they were going to release the pictures.
No, but they said he went ahead and tried to jump the gun before the release of this story to announce he was separating from his wife. That was the...
No, I know that. But the embarrassing part, I think, to Bezos is the pictures. And what they're holding over his head are the release of more stuff and pictures.
But they're not all in this Enquirer story. The first one that ran,
he didn't. But he held it back.
But enough that enough. No, he didn't. But enough for there that you could argue, well, gee, what have I got to lose?
Absolutely. And I do a couple points. Number one, it doesn't matter for the crime of extortion how the threat was obtained. So the embarrassing thing or the threat of force or fear or violence or intimidation, that is a separate thing than the obtaining of the item. That's number one. Number two, I think this is is an extreme show of force and power on Bezos's part. I'm the richest guy in the world. Guess what? Here's this. You're trying to strong-arm me?
Yeah.
How about this? He is absolutely throwing the curtains wide open
but
on this.
But he's risking a lot
sleazy...
doing it, and he acknowledged that. And Brad, you can help me with this. He said, of course, I don't want personal photos published, but I also don't want to participate in their well-known practice, referring to the Inquirer, of blackmail, political favors, political attacks, and corruption. A clear reference to David Pecker's association with the president.
Sure. And I think that's what he's going for. I think he's trying to tie this all together. But the question is
that's
it
a leap
unlawful?
there, right? That's a leap.
It's all a leap. Everybody's assuming what was intended. AMI had the right to keep these pictures. They had the right to keep the pictures or publish them.
No,
just like
and by the way, but think about this, Charlie.
Right
This is the world's richest man.
No,
it would be a big story anyway. And this is a tawdry one
but
that would already get a lot of
What I
attention.
don't understand why there's even any disagreement about this. They sent him a letter. They said, if you don't do this, we will do that.
It didn't really say that.
But I think in New York, and you know
No,
this
it
better
said
than
it.
I do, but in New York, right, you cannot publish something with an attempt to kind of create contempt or ridicule. I mean, that's New York law, right?
This is also the National Enquirer we're talking about.
Well,
I mean,
there's
they're
also an
known
element
for
of
that.
malice.
No, but I'm just saying they do
Being a
function in
public
New York.
figure. Yes, absolutely. That's why when we get mired in these details, the bigger picture is so clear. Someone was threatened to stop doing an activity with something embarrassing, the threat of something humiliating to his reputation.
They made it very clear. They said that literally the Inquirer editor, this is an editor involved in this, no schmo, Dylan Howard, who suggests very clearly that they would publish this series of additional photos of Jeff Bezos and Ms. Sanchez if AMI's terms weren't met. Again, I go back to the quote, the email that's there. It would give no editor pleasure to send this email. I hope common sense can prevail. And quickly.
How would you defend?
What
What if American media engaged you to defend them? What would you say?
As far as a criminal matter goes, you can't tell anything from that statement what was being requested or what was being offered.
It's the editor now getting involved.
Right,
it's
but there's
the editor
nothing,
of this getting involved.
Give me this. It doesn't say I'm going to do that.
No,
it says I hope it will prevail.
No, absolve the Inquirer.
Absolve the Inquirer.
Yeah, that's a big different thing.
I don't think the letter says anything.
It says absolve the Inquirer, or else we're going to show your private parts.
We're talking about criminal law. We're talking about...
I know that. That's called extortion.
No, I don't
and
think...
I don't think it is extortion.
I do, and especially I think that the plot thickens when, given the allegations that Bezos put forth that the investigation was uncovering in terms of Saudi relationship, it kind of, to me, it thickens the plot because it's clear there's a thing of value.
Washington Post,
of course.
Khashoggi, of course, was killed. There were a lot of stories that obviously the Inquirer had done talking up the Saudi prince as a new, visionary leader and all of that. So there are a lot of weird things going on that level. But what if this investigation tries to get to the bottom of a government entity that could have gotten those texts? All bets are off then, right?
Wait, you're saying if a government...
Well, he wants to find out how the hell will this get out there?
Yeah, absolutely.
So he is obviously saying that there were other elements here that had and found ways to get access to these that might not just be the Inquirer.
Absolutely, and of course the ramifications from that would be tremendous too. And I think that the larger...
He's clearly inferring here that this is linked to...
He's saying he's started it.
Yes, and I think
and no one, that's a leap there, but
he is taking the power into his hands, essentially, and again throwing open the curtains and saying, if you are insinuating this or you're going to threaten me, then I'm going to put everything out there.
Fair enough, but he hurt himself, Charlie. If you think about this, Amazon is a big. You really think of it as a family-friendly company, deliver all over the world. Could it taint the company? And he is in the middle of this divorce.
I will say this, couple things. If AMI National Enquirer said, listen, we think that you engaging in this type of behavior is bad for the company, we're going to publish the story, and they were on firm ground with that. The minute they sent the letter and said, quid pro quo, you leave us alone, or else we do this, they get in trouble. And one other thing, Neil, I will say this. Southern District, when it went after AMI on the initial Michael Cohen stuff, went after them not as a journalistic enterprise, but as they dropped all that First Amendment protections. They couldn't get that. they're probably going to get in on this too. They're going to be treated not as a journalism entity. They're going to be treated as a
But
suspect.
if they violated this 3-year agreement they had,
well, then they're really screwed.
They're going
perjury, obstruction. It renders them vulnerable to perjury and obstruction of justice, which is said in the agreement. It's quoted, and then also prosecution of any subsequent
Now, let me,
crimes.
before these latest lawyer clarifications, AMI's attorney John Fine had said, "We emphatically reject any assertion that that its reporting, referring to the Inquirer, was instigated, dictated, or influenced in any manner by external forces, political or otherwise." Clearly saying here,
They're not
this
doing it for
didn't
Trump.
come from Trump. They went overboard to say that, didn't they?
I don't know. I think this still is more of Bezos' attempt to manage public perception. I think his role as a leader of Amazon
You don't
was
think
threatened.
he was strong-armed here? I'm
No,
leaving
I don't
out
think
the
so at all.
suspicions about the
think,
White House.
I think it may have been a foolish letter, but I don't think it was a criminal one. I think his reaction was overboard.
Even the fact that American media was already in the timeout chair.
What do you mean?
Well, the fact is, as Emily has been reporting, that essentially they got in trouble, right, for the run-up to coverage, some catch-and-kill stories that obviously they bought material, and instead of running, they buried the stories.
Like
they got in trouble.
they
got a slap on the wrist for that.
Right.
And so they have some 3-year amnesty, right? But if they do anything that is slightly shady or suspect within that 3-year period, then they are able to be able to
I've done hundreds of
If they commit a
stories.
crime, then they violate the agreement. They're subject to be prosecuted for.
So that's what I'm
campaign
saying. Like,
finance
as a media
issues.
organization, if I already know
He
I have
doesn't think
one
the
slap
letter's
on
a
the
crime,
wrist,
though. That's the
wouldn't I be
difference.
more careful than going forward?
Right, which is even more reason to suspect this letter is an extortion.
But it
They
doesn't
wouldn't have done
matter.
that.
So you're saying their lawyers would have vetted
Well,
it?
I'm just saying,
talking about
you're
crimes.
clearly telling Jeff Bezos, wouldn't it be a pity if these photos came out?
Yeah, it actually came from
of
like
your southern region and questionable photos are. Wouldn't it be a pity if that somehow were to get out again? I don't
Isn't
know.
that the
I'm
truth?
reading all of that
It's
in
the
there.
truth. Right, but it's the truth.
Well, no,
He
but
didn't
then-
say,
no,
they didn't
there's a-
say give me money. They didn't say I'm going to damage your
He
reputation.
hasn't,
They didn't
he hasn't
say-
denied these
they
are
didn't.
images
You're
of
inferring
himself.
that.
No,
he
they-
has not denied any of these images. In fact,
Of course
he's
not.
put them
They're
up there.
his. I think
for
the
world
bigger
to see.
issue
So
that
he's
nobody,
risking a lot.
he should be more concerned with how did they get him and who.
Well, he
intercepted
is.
him.
That's why he hired the investigator.
they
Right,
did-
and
they
that's what
did say-
prompted
they did
this,
say
but
if
his
you don't do-
attack was on AMI. It wasn't on where the pictures came from because they didn't come from AMI.
Listen,
they got the pictures.
This is
So someone
classic.
help him get it.
This is classic quid pro quo.
Right.
They say
Wait, no,
that's
no,
not
way earlier.
extortion.
I will
That's a
say this.
contract.
Yes, it is.
I wish
It
we had
had
more
a
time,
contract.
guys.
It's not a contract because
All
you
right,
need two
guys,
sides to the
guys,
contract.
I will be looking at it. I do
You
think
give me
it's a
this
very,
and I'll give you
can
that.
talk
You do
during the
this.
commercial break. That's fine. I do want to end just on a final line from Bezos that is very, very clear in this very long and unusual presentation on his Medium site, I guess it's called. I prefer to stand up, roll this log over, and see what crawls out. It's starting to crawl out.
I love that.
We'll have more after this.